Good afternoon, how is everyone? It's been a long day, hasn't it? Yeah. No? Alright, brain still fresh? Good, because we're going to stretch them and test them for the next couple of hours, but hopefully with something useful. And not that on top of all the useful stuff you've had up until now. I realised there that I'd left a giant pit glaring in front of me, totally unintentionally, but there we go. That's a great way to begin. Okay. Hi there, my name is Darren Deogee. I know some of you. I've known some of you for quite a long time, and obviously some of you are new to me. I am here dressed up a little bit because I'm only about 50% dressed up because you lot are so dressed down. I thought it would just be too much if I went whole hog. But I think on the subject of gender, these days it's such a touchy subject that it helps if I'm wearing a skirt. So that's just to help make it easier for everybody as we go along. And also because I take the subject matter very seriously, I take this work very seriously. I think it's a very serious issue. I think it's one that has implications for the species and for yourself, for your own happiness, for your own relationships. So the subject today is going to be gender and relationships. We're going to go quite on a journey here, and it seems like a bit of a tangent from the subjects we've covered up until now, but hopefully you'll see that it absolutely isn't, and that actually having good gender insight and gender understanding can help make things like the political situation and the geopolitical situation much easier to understand, because what we are seeing playing out, even in politics, is a gendered situation. So I'll explain what I mean by that as we go along. So first and foremost, this is a subject where, I think we live in a time where there's never been such competition for your attention, for your awareness, for your time. And so first of all, I'm very grateful that everybody's chosen to be here, of course, but also it makes me have to think very carefully about what I want to share with you, because I value my time, I value your time. I probably value my time more than I value your time. And it means that when I have time to have your attention like this, I don't want to waste it on trivialities in any way, and I want to give you stuff that's as useful as possible, but it may come across as a little bit controversial to some of you at first. So if there are some new ideas here that you've not heard before, that you have some resistance to, I just invite you to just sit with them for a bit, and we'll have some questions at the end as well, and hopefully there'll be something useful in here for you all. So, who am I? My name's Darren Deogee. I've been doing this I've been speaking publicly for about 12 years. I've been working on the subject of gender actively, consciously for probably about 25. I've been working with Toltec gender for about 20 odd, and I've been teaching for about 10, and there's on Toltec gender, that is. And there's nobody else that is actively teaching this particular gender system that I'll be sharing with you today as well. So hopefully you'll enjoy the freshness and the newness of what I'll share with you. Okay.
Darren, can you speak up for us at the or move your mic?
Yeah. I can move the mic a bit, but I think the best bit would be if I carry it then. That'll be easier, because otherwise I can't fix it anywhere.
Put it on stick.
Okay, put it on my, sadly, my stick is too mighty for this mic. Look at this, where's it going to go? Yeah, I can hold on to it, that's all. In fact, you know what? I can do it like that. There we go. That'll do it. That should help. I'll try and just remember to lean into my stick then.
Darren, can you also flatten your flag, because it's not picking up on the camera at the moment?
There we go. That's all right. I don't mind if that doesn't pick up. That's just psychological warfare. Okay. There we go. Okay. So, before I really get kicked off with what I want to say, is there anybody here that has an opinion on the subject of gender in the world today? Is it a concern of yours? Is it something that's been in your attention at all, or is it something that you're not really paying any attention to?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a concern.
Yes.
I think it's leading to an awful lot of confused teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We've moved into complete corporate insanity.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Any other comments? Yes.
I think we need to explore what is being a woman and what is being a man.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Yes. Anything else? Yes.
Problems at the universities and schools. It's a real tricky situation.
Yeah.
And your opinion is so different to the narrative you have to work with in education.
Yes. Yes, I'll bet it is if you are working there. Yes. Yes, Nigel.
I think it's it's a very serious situation when we start messing with our identity as human beings.
Yes.
I mean, yes, we all know there's homosexuality and sexual identification issues, but when we start talking about multiple genders,
Yeah.
I think we're really off course for reality in a big way, and
Yeah.
you know, engendering confusion.
Yeah.
I can use that term.
Yeah, indeed. Yes, indeed. So thank you for your thoughts. So yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I'm glad to see there are some concerns here and also some good thoughts on it. For me, the gender thing is simply just the next step in a long-term campaign for divide and conquer, for divide and rule. And in fact, it is, in a way, you know, I'll talk quite a bit about this as we go on, but in a way, the various injustices in the world have been used to exploit people's emotionality in such a way that we now have a place where, as far as I'm concerned, the dividers and conquerors are rolling about laughing at how they have managed to get the children and some of the later second and third wave feminists to do the work for them in terms of the annihilation of the family and the a kind of a rift, a chasm between the most ancient of allies, and that is man and woman. You know, that is, divide and conquer has succeeded when there is a rift between man and woman are seen as mutually exclusive classes, or classes which have separate interests. And from a philosophical point of view, I'm not sure that bit has been engineered or whether it's accidental. It's certainly played into the hands of the engineers, so in my work on gender, the clear objective is to build bridges between men and women, ones of increased understanding and one that allows for increasingly passionate and deep connections rather than the opposite. And I think one of the problems that we've had culturally in the gender story is that the LGBT movement have been the big researchers in the last two generations, and so the big writers on gender, the big active voices on gender have been from the LGBT community. And one of the blind spots in amongst that, despite the fact there's good work come out of that, one of the blind spots in amongst that is that there isn't any active interest in building bridges between men and women within the LGBT community or in their interests. And in a way, those influences with the interests of feminism have really helped dig deep this chasm between man and woman, where they are seen as separate classes with class interests. And I think it's an absolute disaster, it's absolute doom. Yes, Nigel.
Can I just ask you to clarify, is LGBT community or lesbian?
Yeah, lesbian, gay, bi and transsexual. And obviously not all individuals in that movement are culpable in this. It's just, I think it's an accident. It's an accidental byproduct of people seeking to have their needs met, you know.
It's now plus as well, LGBTQ
Yeah.
plus.
Yes, of course, for the various other genders that have been identified. Now, the divide and rule thing is only one aspect of this that is being served with the gender agenda. And certainly when it comes to all the multiple genders and the transgender agenda, what we are seeing is an absolute coup in the history of humanity. Because the coup that has been achieved is total disembodiment. You know, total disembodiment, where as earthlings we are meant to be having an experience in a body. And really, as Nigel was talking about earlier, you want to check in with reality every now and again. And I say, well, okay, how many fingers do I have? Have I got 2? Have I got 25? Have I got 7? How am I going to check? Oh, look at that. I've got fingers, I can look at them, I can count at them, and we can have an objective shared reality which says, look, I counted my fingers and I think I had 5, but I'm not sure. Could you check for me? You know? And this is where we get agreed objective reality. And really, for as long as I've been talking, 12 years now, what I've always been doing is testing my subjective conclusions with my peers to see whether I am arriving at the objective real world, because that's what I want to do. I want to arrive at the real shared world rather than a fantasy. And when we become disembodied, which is what happens in the education system, when we become disembodied and detached from our environment, detached from our habitat, then we can start to draw conclusions which are not only not founded in reality, we can then start to draw conclusions and engage in actions which are harmful to us and to reality. And it's only disembodiment that allows us to engage in practices that are really deeply harmful to our environment and to ourselves. Because when you look at natives, wild animals and native tribes, they don't behave in ways which are damaging to self or environment, but whereas we have lost that nativity. And what happens is, in our culture, you'll find that people will talk about visiting nature. You know, where on this planet is not nature? You know, even if it's in the city, it's moulded earth. It's all moulded earth, all of it is. You know, but the fact that we even we talk about visiting nature. You know, the fact we even have that concept shows how disconnected we are. You know, there's a lot of ideas around where people kind of, you know, they've dismissed the earth as some kind of, this has even been hijacked spiritually. You know, people have been spiritually hijacked to believe that this is some kind of holiday camp or training camp, or this is the illusion until you get onto the real game later on, or you're just here on a stop off from Andromeda or something like that before the next big party and you're just waiting for the next ride out. And all of these things have played into the coup of getting you to not engage in the world, and to not engage as a human being with other human beings and with your habitat. And the gender coup is almost a sign of total victory, because when you are able to convince rational, reasonable human beings of a mature enough age that you can understand such things, when you can convince these humans that they can't trust what they see when they look down at their own bodies, then you've really achieved the victory of disembodiment and abstraction. Now, this abstraction process starts at a very young age, and it begins with the schooling system, which takes kids out of their habitat, sticks them into a box, and starts to load up their mind, which is really, it's the wrong time of life to be bombarding the mind with all these facts and figures and details. You know, the first 10 years of life are really meant to be about physical exploration and getting to know your body and getting to know the world. The next 10 are really meant to be about your emotions and understanding how to manage your emotional development, and instead people are getting crammed full of ideas, whereas really ideas should really come in after that, after we've developed some kind of physical trust and grounding and some kind of emotional continuity and reliability and stability. Then we can start to talk coherently about ideas, because what you end up happening is you have people who have ideas that they feel strongly about, but they have no control of the emotions that go with those ideas. And then you end up with people that we call snowflakes, or you end up with people that don't give a good account of their ideas or their feelings. And for most of this is just a compounded effect of this disembodiment. Yes?
What's a snowflake?
It's a term that's used for
a libtard.
Yeah, for basically when you see these videos on YouTube of people having total emotional meltdowns when they're just presented with an idea contrary to the one that they hold. So rather than being able to hear something, an opinion that's different from them, and then engage back in with another idea or with a counter, instead there's like an emotional loss of control. You know, it's like literally a loss of temper, but it's not anger. You know, they've lost control of another emotion there, and yes, they feel passionate about a subject, but they then stop to give good account of it, and they might scream, they might rant, they might rage, they might make personal attacks, they might physically attack, but it's rather than being able to meet another human being despite the fact that you very passionately disagree with them, but still being able to maintain that adult human capacity to interact
It's
civilly.
because they have a meltdown, that's why they're so big, is that it?
Yeah, it's the meltdown aspect.
Right.
It's the loss of control, and again, this is just partly because people weren't given good examples, and their education was the wrong way around. They were given the ideas before they were given the emotional capacity to manage how they feel about them. And I think that applies to a lot of things. You know, it's basically human development that's the wrong way around. But here's the reason why. When you so the age of reason is well known to be about 7. So it's around the age of 7 that you cut your front teeth. It's around the age of 7 that you begin to be able to reflect clearly and come up with your own conclusions and reason. And one of the reasons that our education system tries to get children literate before then. So they try to get them literate, they try to get them doing maths at a preschool age now. And one of these reasons is that if you can get a small child like that into their mind before they have the ability to reason, then they're likely to not be able to think their way out of the box you've just created for them, which is the box of how we think about and view the world, all the indoctrination that takes place during schooling. But I don't want to get down that channel there. The point I want to make on that is that that's where disembodiment starts, where people are taken out of what would be natural for their development at that age, which is a child would be out playing in the environment, learning while thinking, but learning maths by counting leaves, not by abstractions. You know, learning what divide is by dividing up the portions between their friends and seeing how it actually works in a lived experience rather than abstracted. So when this abstraction is happening at such a young age, what we are now seeing in the transgender agenda is how effective that is at disembodying. You know, because then it says that, okay, once we give them this abstracting process of all this mental stuff that they get at school, less and less playtime, more and more mental stuff, what it means is that now, just before puberty, these children are being able to be convinced that they can't trust what they see when they look down anymore. Now, for any child, any native child that you had left to be in its habitat, running around the place, learning about what hurts, what doesn't, you know, learning about, you know, getting yourself home when you're hurt or whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, a child that gets to a prepubescent age with that kind of experience is not going to be tricked. It was like you were saying, they're in control of their vehicle at that point because they've been on the earth, in the earth, for a good decade, and they've learnt to trust their own experience because they've fallen and picked themselves back up. They've developed a skill that took lots to do. Even walking and talking are skills that took you years to achieve. You know, so you've learned a few of these skills, so there's a sense of self-trust that can be built there. So that sort of native child is never going to be tricked into saying, oh, by the way, you know, that bit between your legs there, that's no indication of what sex you might be. They're just not going to be that easily tricked. And the situation that we're at now is that the disembodiment is and the indoctrination is so effective that obviously we're having children now who are coming to this conclusion, and this is the key to me that shows that there is an agenda at play, because if your child chooses to identify as anything other than their birth sex now, and you disagree and you don't want to go along with it, they can now involve the state and have your child taken off you. Now, what that's a real sign of to me is, back off. This is one of ours. You thought they were yours, they're not. They've proven that they'll swallow the Kool-Aid. They're ours now. We're going to take them away and put them with somebody who will go up the way that we want them to. Which is, I mean, it's real. When we talk about that war in the family unit and the divide and conquer, boom, there it is. Now we're seeing the second phase of this coming through. It's very Orwellian now, where the people that are the strongest advocates for it are the children. Now that's what makes it Orwellian, is when the children are turning on the adults rather than learning from them. This is horrific. This is an absolute nightmare scenario, and that's why we have to be very careful to the counsel that we heed from our children. You know, we can take the information in on board, but as the adult, you're the one that's meant to be able to see and guide them in the world, as you said, Nigel, into what is real.
Is that not just rebellion, though?
Which bit?
Well, then rebelling against gender, is that just not present day form?
Yes, it could well be. I mean, I think the natural urge to rebel is being exploited by the fact there's almost nothing else left to rebel against other than biology. You know, everything else has been rebelled against. Yeah, exactly. Everything else has been rebelled about so much by other people in previous generations. There's nothing left other than my body. You know, yes.
I think it's also up to us adults to make sure that the children do have something to rebel against and do have a clear guidance as to where they go in their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, my son has given me a very hard time about how clear I've been about what I expect from him, but actually now he's reaching adulthood, I can see he's actually quite thankful that I've guided him through that time.
Yeah, of course.
From my view of the world. Not what he thinks, because he's only a child.
Exactly.
He doesn't know.
Exactly. This is this difference. To me, there's a key phrase here. This is the difference between authority and supervision. So an authority is a dictator. So an authority tells you the story. That's what the author is about. So authority, I tell you the story, you live by the story. That's authority. Whereas what a parent's real role is to me is it's supervision, which is that you can see it's like a superpower. It is a superpower. It is supervision, and it's because you can see things that they cannot. Okay? And so this applies to anything really. The real role of the supervisor or the one who has supervision is the one who sees things that the other cannot in a situation, and the responsibility lies with them to then act. you know, because the other person can't see, and you can see they can't see. You know, it's exactly that, and so the responsibility is with the individual who has the supervision, if they feel empowered enough to do so. You know, part of the problem these days is people don't feel empowered enough. The disembodied mind is, to me, the mechanism by which this has been possible. Now, for me now, we're now at the stage, as far as I'm concerned, I think you were saying something to rebel against. I think I've been involved with a few rebels in this place trying to rebel in a few different ways up against the edge of the cage that we face in this country. And one thing I think that I have learned is that the matrix cage that we're dealing with is extremely sophisticated and extremely used to repelling or dealing with opponents and challenges. And I must admit that I'm now in a pre-Ice Age style scatter strategy with my family. Yeah. To me, there's this, you know, we all have to fight almost like a bit of a messiah complex of trying to save everything. And that you should it's like you were saying about the altruism, that you should reach out and try to wake all these people up, that is your responsibility, for, you know, their choices in some way, and it really isn't. I used to think that, you know, and I used to be stressed out, pouring all my energy and my resources into desperately, frantically trying to reach people, and then I realised, you know what, the information is there for anybody. You know, everybody really is. It's a choice now, because there's enough information and counter information out there for people to make a choice. I've seen a lot of press talking recently about the dangers of the return to tribalism. I actually think it's something to celebrate, because to me the difference in tribalism compared to what we have now is, in a tribe we say, look, I don't send my children away to strangers. You know, I don't give my children away to people that I don't know what they're going to offer. Whereas in our state, what it is you hand your children over to anybody, because there's this implicit, you know, tacit trust in the structures that have been created. Now for me, I've tested those structures and they failed the trust test. So to me it's actually a sensible strategy for my line and for my descendants to say, do you know what, you lot can't be trusted anymore. You know, I tell you what, we're going to head off this way. See, in a generation or so, we'll see how you lot are doing. You know? That's honestly, I genuinely think that is perhaps the best way to deal with the absolute cesspit pustules that are the cities now.
How'd you get away from them though?
Well, this is a careful weaving process of, I suppose in a way it's almost like it's a combination of things, you know, a combination of your own strategies, your own beliefs, your own trusts, you know, your own, you know, where you get wind of hope and possibility. I think we all have to follow that breadcrumb trail if we get it, wherever we get it. And I think that's an individual thing. You know, as Nigel said earlier, I'm not seeking to coerce anybody here. I'm not seeking to change anybody's mind. I'm just seeking to share some of my experience and insight for everybody here to make their own choices. You know, so I've talked enough around the subject of gender and the disembodied side, which isn't really about gender. That was just to get the concept of disembodiment across to you. It's a really important thing, because this is one of the biggest problems we face as Westerners, is because most of us went through that schooling process, most of us have to fight disembodiment. You know, we have to work to get embodied in different ways, because the people are so mind dominant. And a good example of the disembodied mind is thinking about your, you know, really, you know, dwelling on dreams or tasks as if you were doing them, but nothing has actually changed. You know, the dishes are actually a good example. Have you ever sat there and, you know, thought about doing the dishes and it seems like such a chore you don't do them? Yeah? So the body hasn't moved anywhere, but the mind, the disembodied mind, has just been like, oh, yeah, picture doing that. It'll just be way too much of a hassle right now. You know, whereas if you just got up and did it, it's done then, isn't it, with no reflection. And we've got to watch for that. This is it's a really interesting part of mind, this. In the Toltec tradition, which is my tradition, they actually view the mind that most people have been taught to use as a parasite. They'll view it as a parasite on your resources and on your time. They'll call it a storyteller. You know, it'll be sitting there, you'll be sitting there in a situation, and this little voice in your head will be telling you about what somebody's glance means or what their actions mean or whatever else, when in actual fact it's just telling you a story. You know, and what they'll say that, watch out, this is the visit. It's a bit like mistletoe on a tree. You know, mistletoe is a parasite. You know, so everybody admires mistletoe, but it has no roots of its own. It's totally fed by the tree, and the tree basically thinks it is the mistletoe. That's why it feeds it. And what the Toltecs say about us is we think we are the disembodied mind. You know, we think it's us. You know, and yet here's a few things to think about to see whether you've got one of these. One of them is whether you talk about visiting nature. You know, another one is talking to yourself as you. And it's like, who's talking to who there? You know, it's because there's a little disembodied section there. Yeah, you just got to watch for it. There's some other examples, but I just can't think of them off the top of my head. But there's some pretty good ones that let you know that there's a part of your mind that really doesn't actually have necessarily your best interests at heart, and that's why they call it a parasite, because it'll feed off your resources to meet its needs. Now, what they are, you know, is different for each of us, I think. But it's just an idea. I'm just presenting it as an idea right now to consider the fact that the mind that you were given through the schooling system is actually a little bit of an invader. You know, it's not native mind. So I'll give you an example of how this goes about now. So we're now moving from talk into a process. So everybody is going to need to be able to see the blackboard for this. Can everybody get yourself into a position where you can see this blackboard that's right here? I'll tell you what as well, I will hold it up as well and waft it round. How about that? That'll make it easier.
Hold it on the table, please.
No, it's all right. I will, but thank you for the offer. I wouldn't dream of using you as like an assistant of mine in any way. Okay, so the reason you will know, so this is basically, what I'm about to show you here now will let you know whether you have a gender wound and whether you have a problem with disembodied mind that you will likely have to work on. Okay? Okay, so, I can't let you all see it now. Wait a minute, yeah, I need to finish it all. Right, here we go. Don't let them see. Okay. You have this problem if you were taught that these here are basic shapes. Okay? Remember, it's a mental problem we're talking about here. So, triangle, circle, square. We all thought they were basic shapes? Yeah? Okay. So that means you have this problem. Okay? I'm going to show you how you fix it today. Right, so...
What's the problem again?
I'm getting to it, don't worry. The problem is disembodied mind and a gender wound. Those two problems, a disembodied mind and a gender wound. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So, and I'll get onto what I mean by gender as well, don't worry. So you know about primary colours and secondary colours? Yeah? Okay. So, a primary colour cannot be reduced to another colour. Okay? It's your basic fractal building block. In terms of checking in with reality on colour, you know, those primary colours are pretty much as basal as you can get. Okay? Shape is no different. Okay? Shapes, basic shapes, cannot be reduced to another shape. Okay? Now the other thing about things which, so the colours all exist in nature. The true basic shapes, the native basic shapes that our mind is actually built on, exist in nature. And they cannot be reduced to another shape. So if I said to you that one of these was a basic shape or almost one, which one would you say it is? The circle. Okay, any triangles or squares in the room? No. Thank you, there's always one. Thank you, brother.
I'm a triangle.
Excellent, triangle. Triangle's the usual one. Okay, so thank you for showing that nothing is absolute. Yeah. So we agree that the circle would be the basic shape. So if I said to you that the other two were made up of a basic shape, but they're not a basic shape, what basic shape would you say they're made up of?
Circle.
Nope. Somebody over there said it? Lines. Yes, they're made up of lines. They're made up of lines.
A line is made of points.
A line is made of points, that's right. The point is the ultimate basic shape. We'll get onto that one in a minute. Yeah, it's the ultimate, it's the original fractal. You're right, everything is an expression of the point.
Sorry, for me a circle and a point are the same thing.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, well I'll add some other bits on here because, yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Yeah. I need a wiper, I really didn't have one. Anyone got a tissue or a napkin or something? Or somebody's garment. Oh, perfect. Strip.
Oh, do you want
Almost.
some water as well?
I've got my tea here, but thank you. Some water on standby. I've got my tea, but I will take a swig. All right, thank you. Okay. So let's get rid of this. Okay. Actually, before we go on to looking at the line in a bit more detail, and we'll look at all the basic shapes, I just want to talk about why this is important. Okay. So At the minute, so if I said to you just, if I asked you what that is, what is that?
Infinity.
Oh, yes. What else could it be?
Nothing.
Nothing, that's right. What else could it be?
Everything.
Everything. Anything else?
A hole.
A hole, that's right. Anything else? A hat, the sun, a wheel, a bit, there's a whole host of things, isn't there? Yes. Okay. So it could be all sorts of things. But then if I do this, hold on a second. Oh, come on, board, don't let me down. Ah. And my board needs repainted. Come on.
Another bit of chalk.
I don't think it's the chalk that's the problem, I think it's the board that's the problem.
Do you want to wet it? Would that be any better or not?
No, do you know what? It's just come through. It might have been the chalk. You're right. So I've done a triangle, circle, and square, and then I'm going to do a 0, a 1, and a 2 there. And then down here, I'm going to do the word orb. Orb. Okay. Everyone see that? Triangle, circle, triangle, square, circle, 0, 1, 2, word orb. Okay. So, how your mind thinks about shape compared to how it thinks about number, compared to how it thinks about character, are completely different tracks of mind. They're totally different avenues of thinking. But first and foremost, they're shapes first. Then, through relationship and context, you will then know what you're looking at. So you don't know what that is until you give it a relationship. Then you'll be like, oh, it's infinity because our context is infinity. Oh, it's the sun because our context is the sun. Oh, it's a 0 because our context is number. Oh, it's an O because our context is writing. So the thing about the basic shapes is they turn up everywhere. Just like the colours, the basic shapes, the true basic shapes are fractals that exist everywhere in nature and in our mind and, as we'll see in a bit, in gender. Now, the problem here is that the shapes that we've been given aren't based in nature. Okay, they're secondary shapes. And what ends up happening then is that we use them, these shapes that we're given, as the building blocks for not just our numeracy, but our speech and our thinking. And if the building blocks you're given are fundamentally disconnected from the real world, then every single thought you think with it will have the same disconnection built in. Okay, every single thought you think with it has a disconnection built in. That is the maze of the mind. That is the trap of the mind. You can't think your way out of it using the structures they gave you. And that's why most people's mind is frantic. It's desperately trying to see the way out. It desperately wants to be embodied. It wants to be connected. It wants to be integrated. It's sick of being blamed for everything and made out to be the bad boy in the room. Everybody goes along to all the spiritual events and they're told to leave their mind outside. They're told to switch it off. Honestly, people, what are we doing here? Do you know what I mean? Poor thing. It's there all the rest of the time going, hey, look, I'm good at stuff. Come on, I'm really useful. Everyone's like, oh, that fucking mind of mine. Goodness me, people, please. It really is our ally, but not in its disembodied form. In its disembodied form, it can be an enemy. Here, another example of what lets you know it's disembodied is when people talk about stuff. Okay, talking about stuff. Talk about how you feel. Right, talking about how you feel has never helped anyone do anything. Speaking from how you feel is completely different because it's embodied. And our culture asks you to talk about how you feel. Don't stand there and talk to me when you're all angry like that. Go away and calm down and then come back and talk about it. I don't want to fucking talk about it. I want to let you know how I feel. This is what's going on in my body right now. Embodiment is very different from about stuff. And we can talk about our idea, we can talk from our ideas as well. But it's just another example. These little hinges of language let us know where we are a bit disconnected and a bit literally unhinged, disembodied, literally. So, our problem is that our framework, the shape framework we're given, has some disconnections built in. So we can give you the repairs of that today. It'll take time for it to land, but, once the seed is planted, it generally works. So, here are the actual basic shapes, the ones you see everywhere in nature. So you have a line. As the gentleman said, the point is actually the first basic shape. Hold on here. You get a line, you get a circle, and so if we said that basically these are the two basic shapes we're going to start with. We'll add the point in a bit. So these are the ones that we derive from the triangle, circle, and square. Okay, we get the line there and we get the circle. Now these are actually the age-old symbols of the male and the female. This is about the penis and the vagina. And in fact, the most ancient Hawaiian deity they call the blind god Io. And it's like, it's not Io, it's line circle. It's about the male and the female, the two together, okay? And the fact is that these, because we are now talking at basic shape level, we're talking in fractals, which means that when I talk about drawing a line, okay, I'm talking about all the meanings of what drawing a line might mean. And when I talk about making a point, when a point is the original basic shape, when we're talking about the real basics that are really embodied and that are actual, then when I talk about making a point, you know that there are many contexts and connotations to making a point. You could be talking about the point of this conversation, the point of your life, the point of this work, the point of all life. It's the ultimate fractal that you can refer to the point of things, you know. So these two, male, female, when they are in balance, you get the third basic shape that is present in every single element in nature. You see it in plants, animals, every single element. What is the shape, people? It's a spiral, that's right. What shape is our galaxy, people? It's a spiral. And that is when the male and the female are in balance, where you have a line that arcs and a circle that can't complete itself. And it's to do with the pressure of the genders on each other. The pressure, okay. Now here's the thing, what is the difference between these two shapes and every other shape that you were taught? What's the difference between these two and every other shape?
Primary and secondary.
Dynamic.
That's part of it.
Dynamic.
Dynamic, can you see what you mean by dynamic?
Well, maybe they have direction.
Okay, yeah, they do, that's right. One thing that's key difference between these two is that you will always, yes, you will always end up somewhere different from where you started. You will always end up different from where you started. Whereas every other shape you were ever taught takes you right back to where you started.
What do you mean?
When you draw.
Name every shape that you were taught. Dodecahedron, hexagon, pentagon, circle, triangle. Every single one of them takes you right back to where you started. Okay, you finish at the point that you began. These two are the exceptions, and you weren't taught them. In fact, how many of you have been told that there's no straight lines in nature? Exactly, it's like utter, this is infecting the embodiment realm, and this is part of the whole duff steer of disembodiment. It's as if these people have never looked at a blade of grass, or a leaf, or a tree. There are straight lines everywhere in nature, and this is part of the war on the masculine. There's a major war on the masculine here. How many people here were taught that they live in a patriarchy? I was taught it, yeah? Okay. So, how would you like it if I told you that it was a myth? Total myth. Okay, it is a myth. I'll give you an example of why. Because as a man, there are certain places that I can't go in this country unless I wear certain garments. Okay, I'm not wearing them today, but let's just draw attention to them. Who's got one on? Oh, there's nobody here. That's close enough. Okay, well listen, everybody can picture your average business person in the city, can't you? Okay, they're wearing some garments. Alright, so it's a suit I'm talking about. Okay, we're talking about a suit here. So there's places that I can't go unless I am suited and booted, unless I am wearing a shirt. Can't get in. Now, what do we call the part of the shirt that's around the neck? It's a collar. What do we call the part around the wrists? Cuffs. Okay. So in the language of English, who wears a collar and cuffs? Slaves. Can you think of any context in the English language other than slaves or prisoners where somebody would wear collar and cuffs? Okay, how is this a patriarchy, people, when it's the men who are collared and cuffed? And you don't get taught, the war is on the masculine, it's on the line, it's on the one that you don't get taught about. You get taught the shape of the feminine, not the shape of the masculine. And it's the men that are collared and cuffed. And I'm not making it up. This isn't a conspiracy. There is no record of when the collaring of the men started, and every one of us lives in a graded collar system. Blue collar, white collar, dog collar, all the police are known by their collar number. And again, I'm not making it up. The language is there, the evidence is there. It's right in front of it. It's all about saying, what is a worthy place to place your attention? Where is somewhere where there's some information that might be new to you? And I'm suggesting to you that the information of the collar and cuffing of the men is massively significant against the gender narrative that you have been fed. Totally significant. Because it's just been instrumental in turning children and women on men. But it's about turning on the masculine. So let's look at why that is the case. And it is because when masculine energy is thriving, you will always end up somewhere different from where you started. And that is the absolute antithesis of state. Okay? It's the antithesis of state. Change is the antithesis of state. They can't coexist. Whenever you try and change the state, there is resistance. Okay, and that is because there is gender tension between the masculine and the feminine. Because all the shapes of the feminine are about form and state. And that's why what we see in the world is generally accepted as the feminine. It's matter, mater. It's generally accepted as feminine because it's the form. It's the shape of things. And that's what we get from the mother. We get the substance of the egg we get from our mother. We get the kind of like invisible, ephemeral, gooey bit from our dad. But the structure comes from the mother. That's that form side, the matter side. The bit that we're not getting taught about is the change side. This is the change energy. This is the energy that spurs us on to make points and draw lines. Okay? And this is where totic gender, when I'm talking about making points and drawing lines, totics would say, that's how you know. So in a conversation, so people don't realise that gender is a fractal, which means it exists at every layer of reality, all the way up. You never leave gender behind. You know, as far up as you go, there is transmission and reception. And as long as there's the energy of transmission and reception, it is gender you're dealing with. All communication is gender. That's why we talk about conception. To conceive an idea is pure gender. But because people are all taboo down here, oh, I can't talk about gender, oh, I don't know if I can trust some bits, all the rest of it, oh, I don't know, oh, because people are all taboo about gender there, it means that they never enter into the realm of conception. Facilitating others to conceive new ideas, to see new vistas, to see a new direction. That's what communication is pure gender. And if you don't get gender at a basic level, then your communication won't be serving you as effectively as it could. That's why I was trying to make it earlier. Gender is a very important subject for all of us. Because if you want people to get your point, if you want people to hear your point, which in totequity says, that's the masculine in all of us. Because then if you look at a male baby and a female baby, the male's got something pointing out. So the totecs use that to say, it's really basic though, it's really basic because then you can use in a conversation, whoever is making the point is in the male role. And everybody else, if you want to conceive with what they are sharing, then you have to open up to receive the point. And if you don't open up to receive the point and you're just sitting there waiting to make your own point, which is what happens around most coffee tables, people aren't receiving, they're not listening, they're not journeying, they're just waiting to make their own point. That's a gender imbalance. You've got two masculines there, both waiting to make a point, no conception, no communication, just a whole lot of mental masturbation. It's literally what it is. You know, people can't wait to share their points. They can't wait to get them out there. They say, whoa, 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 whoa. Have you checked in whether that's appropriate or necessary here? Do you know what I mean? You'll see throughout I'll be seeding in different things about how simple some of these qualities are to really help you notice the gender of your interactions. Because gender is at play 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in every interaction you have. And if you want to be effective, you need to get a handle on it. Because otherwise it's like a limb that nobody showed you how to use, or a chakra that people forgot to tell you about. And if you imagine that nobody... So for most people, they didn't really get a good demonstration of how to express anger. Okay? So if you picture... Can everybody picture a baby? So if you picture a baby on the floor here, you know, lying, kicking and crying and filling its nappy and all the rest of it, oozing awareness, zero body dexterity, you know, you've got no dexterity or control of the body there. Took a year to learn to walk, and you did it by observation because nobody shows you what you do with a femur, you know, or a tibia. So you did it by watching, and you all achieved it. Why? Because I can see you all walking and out. Same goes for talking. But the thing is, if you think about how long it took you to get good with, say, your hands, you went from clawing your mum when you were trying to caress her. How long did it take you to be good with a paintbrush or a pencil, or to carry a hot drink or catch a ball? It's years, people. Years of dropping that ball. Years of having it hit you in the face or bounce off your chest before you realise, oh, I can do this. It takes years. Why? That's why we have no use crying over spilt milk. Why? Because it's going to get spilt. I've got 4 children, it is going to get spilt. It's going to happen. No point worrying about it. Now the thing here is, though, that everybody accepts the fact that it takes a while to become skillful with your physical body, and that it spasms around a bit until you get good with it. What people don't realise is it's exactly the same for your emotions when they are birthed forth properly at puberty. And at puberty what happens is the emotions and sensuality spasm and lash in the same way as the physical body did when you first picked it up at 0 years old. And what you get is you get, instead of flushes, oh, arm does this, leg does this, bowels do this. Instead of that, it's, oh, attraction does this, arousal does this, you know, shame does this. But when we look at the examples of how tempered and skillful the people around us expressed their anger, their sadness, their sensuality, their sexuality, it perhaps wasn't as skillful as how well they caught the ball or passed your cup of tea, is it? But the point is, the principle is exactly the same. You go from having an energy move through your body that spasms out with your control until you get a handle on it. And you're either going to compress and suppress it, or you're going to get good at it. One of the two. Or repeatedly get it wrong and just be in complete denial about it is the other thing. But the point I'm making here is that our gender is exactly the same. Same with the mind. Most people are actually, when they go and learn meditation or other spiritual things, they're learning a coping strategy to shut their mind up because they don't know how to stop it spasming. And it's like, look, it's spasming just like your arm did. Just like your feelings did. It's exactly the same principle. You just need to learn that the way you rein the mind in and the emotions in is slightly different from how you rein the hand in. But all of us are capable of doing that. The problem is, we don't get good demonstrations. So right now, for example, anger, every one of you was probably told at a very young age that expressing your anger to your mum and dad was not all right. You might have got that message. You might have looked something like, go to your room, don't speak to me like that, you're not getting any dinner. I don't know. Or it might have been really nice and supportive. Excuse me. Look at that, it's me as well. I mean, there's just no escaping that. Here we go. Right, get gone. Yes, not now. Let me just put this on quiet. I'll just turn it off. There we go. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah, so anger. So for most people, what happens is they suppress their anger and they start to internalize it in different ways. So that now, all of you probably have a different way of expressing anger. Some of you might go dead quiet and just not call me back and not invite me out next time. Some of you might go blah, 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 blah. Slam the door and get out. Others might just make me a crap cup of tea. You might give me less food. Only you know how you drip feed your anger indirectly rather than directly. It's an indirect way of saying, look, I'm angry with you because of this. But because it's been so tabooed, we end up having these really indirect, convoluted ways of expressing it. Now, the thing is, sensuality and gender is the same. You know, because the thing is sadness, anger is anger. What we're talking about is how is it spasming through the body. That's the only thing that's different here. You know, it's the same with the gender stuff. So when it comes to mastering and understanding, so for example, the point making stuff, at first most people struggle to make points. They might. So how many of you don't like speaking publicly? Yeah, so for most people that's kind of because they feel so exposed and then they're not sure whether the points are going to be well made or whether they're going to be well received, all this sort of stuff. By realising that actually when we bring our gender understanding into it and we realise, by practicing my point making, that is me actually practicing my masculine, you know, making points, becoming skillful with it, practicing with it. Practicing, noticing when your own point maker is wanting to jump in a conversation, but the other person's still talking, and practicing going, no, I better open up to this if I want to hear this person. You know, this is how we can start to become skillful with our own sort of like dexterity moving forward. I feel like I've lost my thread as I was going down into the realm of self-mastery there. So the whole point of that little digression was about saying that, to me, self-mastery of mind, gender, emotion are exactly the same as mastery of the body. It's exactly the same, it's no different, and that is, it starts off spasming and you going, what the hell is this going through me? And then after that, by watching what it does a few times, you then start to be able to rein it in, and once you start to rein it in, you can then use it. And that then is when you, as far as I'm concerned, is when you've achieved temper. It doesn't just apply to anger. So temper originally is about a useful edge on metal. It's about turning metal which is brittle into something which is useful. Okay, and that's what I'm suggesting we do with all of our feelings really, is we want to make them something useful, and if we let our sadness get to us to the point that we don't act, then we've lost our temper with sadness. You know, if we let our anger get to us to the point that we turn on ourselves, then we've lost our temper. You know, we haven't turned it into a useful edge, it's become dangerous and brittle. Now now I remember my point on this. The reason I mentioned all of those is because all of those feelings are actually masculine in nature. We experience them in the feminine because we feel them, but they're masculine because they're an expression of our desire for the world to change. Our anger and our sadness are a desire for the world to be different. Oh, I wish they hadn't done that. I wish that hadn't happened. I wish I hadn't done that. You know, it's all an expression of desire for the world to be different. And if you've lost your temper with it, then it means that you cannot bring change. You can't change the world then. And it means you're just stuck with those feelings, the sadness, the frustration, the helplessness. All of these are fuel. These are charge for change. Now in the Toltec tradition, gender is an expression of electromagnetism in the human form, where the feminine is the magnetic. Okay, ladies, that's why you have to deal with being attractive. It's the magnetism. Okay, that's the magnetic. The masculine is the electrical. That's why it's all about charge and discharge with men. You know, it's literally that. Now for all of us, that's how to watch it in yourself. All of us have both. All of us have the magnetic. All of us have the electrical. And whenever you are charged up is when you're dealing with your masculine. It's your desire for the world to be different. Is your charge. It's the charge for change. And if you've had war waged on the masculine, you don't understand its nature, you don't understand its purpose, you don't understand its quality, then it means you don't know how to use it to bring about change. And you need it to bring about change. You cannot bring about change without the masculine energy. That's the thing, it's fundamentally needed. That's what spark is all about. Spark, inspiration, is all about change. That's why the male energy is short-lived, it's a spark. That's what the Toltecs would say. Men carry a spark to face the unknown for a bit, and then after that, you know, it's gone. You know, a bit like in male sexuality, everybody. You know, the charge is there for a bit, and then it's as if it was never there. It's the same for all of us with our desires for change. But if we don't use the fuel as it comes to you, your own charge, as it comes to you to tell you that you want the world to be different, if you don't use it, if you just talk about it, then depression is your guaranteed end result. Depression is the opposite of expression. It's compounded, repeated non-expression. It's a compounded, repeated non-honouring of the charge and the feeling that moves through you and not giving it space in the world. Not honouring it enough to say, look, my feeling deserves to take up room. It deserves to take up space. And what most people don't realise is that this is a gender issue. Okay? I'll tell you how. Here is the shape that you weren't taught about. Okay? It was the line. What is the tool you use to draw a line better than anything else? What do you run it against? A ruler. Okay, a ruler. So remember, we're speaking in fractals now because we're talking about the basic shapes. What relation does a ruler have in a state? Okay, the ruler is in charge of the state. Okay? Now, what else do you use a ruler for other than drawing a line?
Measuring.
Measuring, that's right. So, if we look at the ruler, again, it's talking in fractals here now, if you look on a ruler, there could be any numbers on there, couldn't there? It could be centimetres, it could be inches, it could be millimetres. So in maths, the general term for those is values. Okay, those are values. So a ruler is what you use to measure values, and most people in here have a broken ruler, which is a broken internal ruler, which is the one which measures the value of things. Primarily, the value of yourself. Primarily, the value of what you find inside yourself. And so for most people, they have a broken sense of the value of what they find inside themselves and have no sense of it, or it's totally broken. And that is why they go and seek valuation and accreditation from others. The number of people I know who awoken to something mysterious and unnamed within them and then went and got a certificate in something else is staggering. Because they couldn't own the fact that they found something inside themselves that had value in and of itself, as itself, but because their internal ruler was so broken, they couldn't appreciate and honour that value. They go and say to others, I'm a valuable, look, is this good enough? Is this good enough? Can you just check the value, because I can't value myself enough. Okay? It measures values. And when it's broken, you cannot value yourself or measure things in the world appropriately or fairly. Now remember that I said that basic shapes exist in other forms, they exist in number, they exist in character. Okay? if I was to give this a character, which character would it be? I. I is the product of the ruler. Okay? If I was to give it a number, what number would it be?
1.
I is quite clearly the 1. Quite clearly. All you've been taught is the feminine one, the blob of oneness and wholeness. This is the masculine one, the individual, the I the one. I choose to do this with my life. I choose to take charge of this and do this. By whose say so? My own. Not accountable to you. That's sovereignty. And most people don't realise they talk about being the one. They secretly think they're the one. They don't know how to act on it and express it because they're disembodied. And they don't realise the mechanism is through the repair of the ruler, which is by updating your values. Point by point, as you said earlier, the ultimate fractal, these are all expressions of the ultimate fractal, which is the point. And point by point, you make your points and you draw your lines. And it is by doing that that you define your state. Because in a way, the feminine, the magnetic, is the energy of acceptance and welcome. Okay, the feminine is acceptance and welcome. It's inclusion. The masculine is non-acceptance. And the first way that anybody ever expresses the non-acceptance is in the word no. Because that's when it's like, oh yeah, we're all one and nice, it's all lovely, until they say, do you know what, no. How many people here don't like saying no to people? Okay, that's the wounded masculine. It's not the word no, it's the feeling that goes with it. Because you're feeling the disconnection that goes with it. Now, as long as you're unskillful with the male and the female, it's an absolute cut-off, and that's why people don't like the feeling. It's like, oh, if I say no, then it's going to cut all our ties, and our relationship will be damaged in some way, because it's absolute, and you don't have the deftness and the dexterity to realise or to apply the fact that I can draw as many lines as I like here because we're still connected, and I'm deft enough with my point making to say I can decisively and incisively say, do you know what? I'm really with you on this, that and the other, but I totally disagree with you on that. Absolutely not with you at all on that. But look, still love you. We're still one. We're not disconnected here. We're not cut off. But it takes practice to get used to that feeling of assertion. I know loads of women who get called aggressive when they are asserting themselves by other women. And it's because they're expressing the masculine. They're basically saying they're making clear points and they're drawing clear lines. That's all it is. They're not aggressive people. They're just making points and drawing lines. Now here's the thing. This isn't really this circle that you see in nature. The real circle you see in nature is this one. Okay? That one there. A circle with a circle in the middle. Or concentric rings. That's what you'll see in nature. And in a way, this is, in the female, this is about that portal within. The portal by which we all come through. Or maybe it's the eye in the middle. You can play with it however you like. But this is what you'll really see. And we use this to represent the egg, because an egg looks like that, we use it for cells, we use it for atoms, we use it for all sorts, because nature builds in that. Cut up in trees, cut up in flower stems, cut up in all sorts of life, you'll find this shape. Now, what was my point, and why did I mention that bit on the feminine? Pick up my own thread there, I lost it there. I was talking about point making, wasn't I? And oh yes, so what has effectively happened is, when you have the broken internal ruler, when you have been taken away from your parents and absolutely, indoctrinated or brainwashed in whichever form it took for you, what happens is this gets rubbed out, which is your boundary. So in a cell, the masculine would be like the semi-permeable electrical membrane on the outside. Yeah, that's what determines what gets in and what gets out. And when you have a broken ruler and a broken state, and you're not in control of what gets in and what gets out, you're not in control of your state, which includes your mood, your state of well-being, your state of worth, your state of purpose. If you're not able to hold on to those things, if you can meditate in the morning and feel great and connected to everything in the universe and everything's all right, and then go walking down the street for 20 minutes and it's all gone and you feel like crap again, then you're not in charge of your state. You can't take care of yourself. Yes, you can go and check in and touch base again, but you can't take care of yourself. You're not in charge of your state. So really, in a way, what you need to work on first of all is having a stable state. And then you can become a true interstate traveller, where you carry your state with you and meet others in their state without necessarily being moved from yours. And it's a gender issue. It's pure gender. And here's how you do it. So basically, schooling and absolute subjugation to authority is what got rid of most people's boundary around their I. Okay? So and now this circle with the circle in the middle, where do you see it when you look at me? In my eye. That's right, in my eye. And the heart of the eye that this represents is the same colour on every animal on the planet, regardless of species. What do we call it? The pupil. It's the pupil. We are eye to eye, pupil to pupil, pupils of the one. To me, what's staring back through the hole is the black hole with a W at the centre of the universe, peering back through every eye, every pupil. And to me, that is our equality right there. When I stand before you, that's what I look for. Oh yes, yes, you're like me, you've got a pupil. Oh, you're like me, you've got a pupil. Oh, you've got a pupil too. Oh, you're a pupil of the one too. Oh, you too. You know, everywhere, pupils of the one all over the place. But yeah, when we get rid of this, when we have this all taken away, then we have no buffer, no boundary. Our emotions are immediately reactive to whatever is going on around us, and we start life in this state. We're like this as children. We have no buffer because children don't know how to draw lines or make points. They don't know how to do that. You know, that's why they're so exploitable and so abusable. It's because they have no boundary to their state. You can drag them into your state if you want, and they can't stop you. They have no boundary. Now, what happens getting older is that if you are unable to stop information coming in to be able to take care of your state, like before it influences it and moves you from it, makes you feel crap again or something like that, then this is the issue. And how you resolve it is point by point. And that is with I statements. I will no longer accept this in my world. I will no longer do this. I'm going to tell that person I'm not hanging out with them anymore. I'm going to tell them I've had enough. I'm going to tell them I'm changing. And what happens then is we gradually define our state. Once we've defined it, we've got something to look after. And what will happen is you'll learn, as we all do, that when you don't do this, unsavoury, undesirable things will be in your world and in your state that will be taken away from your peace, happiness and well-being, and it'll get to you. You know, but you're the one that has to purge it. You're the one that has to push it away with these I statements. So people, so many people are caught up in what I call collectivism, globalist collectivism, which is kind of like, you know, we the people, critical mass, we the people, critical, yeah, all we need, if we just had 5,000 people here instead of this, that would be enough. It would all change. It's rubbish. Okay? I've seen it. I've seen 5,000 people in one police line. 5,000 people. We the people, critical mass, we just need some more, we just need some more. Nothing changes until I take a step forward. And then another one might take a step forward. And the we is an illusion of a collection of I's, a collection of ones that choose volitionally, I'm going to go along with that or not. And the reason the big change hasn't happened in the world is because all these I's and ones don't actually know how to organise themselves. It's a big issue. This is the thing, change always comes from I. It's never from we. We're all sitting here happy until I need to go to the toilet. You don't need to go to the toilet, I do. We're all happy until I get cold and I want to put a jumper on. I'm the one that's cold, not you. The change is an I thing. This is why it's an expression of the masculine. So this is why definitely you should really steer away from you statements. And starting off talking about you this and you that, that's deadly. I mean, there's some free workshops on that and non-violent communication online. But if you look at Marshall Rosenberg's work on that, he basically talks about you being a violent word, that it's an accusation. If you flip that around and own it as I, it's much more empowering, but you'll feel it because you're making a statement about yourself. I feel this. It's not anybody else, is it? Compared to when I go, oh, you know when you do this and da-da-da-da-da, I've created a big smoke screen around my experience and around what's happened, and I'm just kind of hoping that you're going to believe that I'm talking about you, whereas really it was me all along. And I just haven't had the guts to say it, because I don't like how it feels when I speak from I. Because it's just this big issue with how people feel about those things. Yes.
Clarity.
Yeah.
That I was understanding as being maybe more masculine, but then
Yes.
so you're saying then the masculine can heal the damage of the feminine?
Yeah, but what they do is they work together. So this one, the masculine, really its positive form is discernment, and it receives all of its information from the feminine within you. All the information for the ruler comes from the feminine, and it is what we call. So we looked at the tool that draws the line. What's the tool that draws the circle? What do we call it? A compass. Okay, there's two forms of compass. There's the one that does the circle drawing, and what's the other one?
Navigation.
Navigation. And what does it register?
Direction.
From what? What's it reading?
Poles.
Magnets. It's magnetism. Exactly what we're saying the feminine was. So really what we say is that this is the compass. We have the ruler and compass. And the compass is how you respond to the field. So that could be any field. That could be, so like our history, how we know each other, Nigel and I, is through law. So there's so much sovereignty stuff. This is when I first got into line drawing. With sovereignty, it was like, I will no longer accept this authority. I'm going to come and draw this line and say no more in my state. This is the kind of thing that we used to do, play with. And I forgot what my point was there. Navigation, that's it, thank you. So we would be sitting like here going, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say this and then I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this. And then they walk in and the field of the court hits. The field of the belief of all the people in there, what they believe they're there to do, what they're going to say, and that all influences how I feel. That's my feminine. And that then informs the ruler to say, by the way, all that bravado you had, we're not quite up to that at the minute. My knees are wobbling, my lips shaking. I'm not really sure about this at all. I don't think we should say it quite like that, Maybe if we said it slightly differently, we can manage that. And that's where they work together. This is what's so wrong with the internet, is that it's all ruler, no compass. People are out there making all their points, not giving a shit about how people feel afterwards. It's all this really loose, it's all gender imbalanced stuff, all point, no compass.
Well, it's also because they don't have to take on how they feel, because it's all anonymous keyboard warriors.
Well, exactly. There's no I in there because they can obfuscate and cast a smoke screen over even who that is.
To feel it.
Yeah. So what's happening in most relationships is a misfiring of both of these. Both people having charge and not realizing when it is appropriate to express that charge or discharge it or how to discharge it. And what you end up with is clashes. People not realizing, too much charge here and I'm not open to receive the fact that my partner's also got a charge point to make. And then somebody's got to give way first, but unless you've got gender knowledge, you just end up with two people charged up at loggerheads, not giving way before somebody realizes, this is gender. One of us has to receive. Who's going to go first? I'll go. Knowing I'll get another shot afterwards, it will go the other way. And this is the thing is, the one who has supervision has the responsibility. If you're the one that has the gender know-how, then it's generally in your shoes to just actually realise, I can just flip here and receive. And then I'll make my point, because I have time. And again, it's only when people are spasming that they don't, so they feel frantic that they won't get to make their point, or they feel frantic because they're not heard. And but you're not hearing me, 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 and everybody's just sitting there waiting to make their points, and it's just gender imbalance. That's all it is. It's both being in the masculine, and one of them needs to flip into the feminine. Now, I could really talk about line drawing and point making and circle drawing and all of this loads. I mean, the basic shapes are really quite profound. As one example, for example, the basic shapes, the line and the circle are what lie behind all technology. The very thing that has got most people the most disembodied is all governed literally by zeros and ones. Binary is at the root of all machine code and all operating systems. It's just circles and lines, people. Also, all number is bound by a circle and line. All number, right? There are no other numbers. Circle, line, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, line, circle. That's all the numbers. There's no others. They're completely bound in there. That's a fractal headbender for anybody who wants to go to that part of their mind. That's really the root of your mind. Because the point here is when we're at the basic shape level, you're at the point where rational mind collapses and you're into intuitive and felt mind. And these become the bridge between the two. and it becomes a mechanism by which intuition becomes clearer. The relationship between rational mind and intuition starts to work properly, and all of a sudden, what was a breakdown of cogs not fitting between emotion, mind and body, all of a sudden they all start to work well and smoothly, believe it or not, after a bit of practice, of course.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry for going back. The use of I and you.
Yes.
Is it necessarily gender-based?
Yes.
Or can it also
100%.
Can it also be maybe functionality?
No, well, I think the function is the result. But function is gender. You know, that's the point. The function of them is the gender. The point making itself is the expression of gender in that moment. It is the function that reveals what the masculine does and what the feminine does. It's all functional. You know, none of it's abstracted at this point. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? You're frowning a bit. Do you not get what I mean?
Yes, I do.
You sure? Don't just say that. Don't fob me off now.
I do understand you, but I don't think. Well, the way I look at it, a person can say I.
Yeah.
Without really being gender-based, but just using, the pronoun I.
Yes. So what I'm saying to you is that is gendered. That's the point I'm making to you.
Right.
I'm saying that when you're saying that, this is referring to the individual. You're not referring to the collective when you say I.
Right.
You're not referring to the whole oneness of the universe, everything. There's no we involved with I. It's pure individual. Okay. And what is the number one accusation many women will accuse men of being? He's selfish. I. Okay? It's something men have to work on because of that. Because it's about individualism. The thing that they're expressing is about being the individual. Okay? So all of us, because we're now living in more gender balanced times, this is the problem. This is how gender confusion arises. Because in our world, you've got people that have tied gender to jobs and garments. That's why I stand here in a skirt. It's not a skirt, it's a kilt, of course, but the point is, in native tribes around the world, men wear frocks. It's not a gendered garment. Jobs are not gendered. Okay, they're really not. The fact that it became a gendered issue in our country and species is a separate matter, and it's been used to confuse things. To confuse them. We're all in a position where we have the male and the female in us, and what's happening with these people that are becoming gender confused is they're realising, some of these guys are realising they don't like the feeling of that electrical. It's a bit like, whoa, that's quite scary. And so it's easier for them to be in the magnetic and the feminine. And the same on the other side of the coin, it's easier for women sometimes to be in the masculine form for them, in the point maker, because the Toltecs would say this anyway, is that men hide in the feminine and women hide in the masculine, because it's easier for them, because both feel vulnerable when they are expressing the power of their sex. Men feel vulnerable when they're in their masculine, and women feel vulnerable when they're in the feminine, until they develop a dexterity with it anyway. That's the point. So the other thing about this is that we can now start to draw a table that starts to tie in some of the politics and the geopolitics here, because really the masculine is the political right. It's objective, it's individualist, it's not very feeling. This is the feminine or the political left. It's collective, it's subjective, it's feeling based. And that's why you'll find that actually what's been exhibited very clearly by the political left and right is gender, basically. If you identify on the political left, then you favour more a subjective, feeling-based approach to community and living, and if you lean more on the right, then you're more rational and objective. But it's a gendered split. In terms of values and approaches, it's a gendered thing. And actually what we're seeing in geopolitics as an expression of the war on the masculine and the collaring of the men and the obfuscation of the line is the loss of the lines of our forefathers, of the ones that came before us, that drew lines of safety that we call the nations. Those lines of safety were drawn, and people think that they knew why they were drawn, they were drawn for nefarious ends, whereas maybe what we're learning now is that wasn't the case. And actually one of the reasons all these people are calling for no borders and no boundaries, that's part of the war on the masculine, which is to get rid of all boundary. Now if this was a cell, and we got rid of all the boundaries on them, if we got rid of all the boundaries in the cells in the body, what would we have? You'd have a dead cell, you'd have a cancerous body, it'd be dead. It would be, it's awful, and it's literally what's going to happen for us is when we take, okay, you can say, I don't like the structure of the house my forefathers and foremothers built. That's one thing. Okay, that's fine to say that. It's another to say and presume, I know all the things that they were dealing with when they did that, I'm now going to burn it down. Okay? And actually now, I speak, in my clients, I have one-to-one clients, I work with couples as well, and in general self-development as well as gender stuff, and one of the things that is rising is a rising sense of anxiety and stress, of a sense of the unknown out there, and of structures that they used to be able to trust that they can no longer trust, and they're now feeling anxious and nervous about it. And it's like, this is the consequence of when you make war on the masculine. This is what happens. You when you're sitting, so, you know, if you ask a Native American where their ancestors are, they'll tell you they're in the rocks and the trees. And you say that to a Westerner and they're like, all right, fair enough. Check them out, what are they on about? You know? But for us, our ancestors are visible somewhere. And actually one of the things is, one of the things in the gender war has been the obfuscation of the gifts of men, and a changing revisionism, a revision of the story of the past. And in a way, people's compass, their feeling nature, is being exploited to wage the war between men and women. And it's because what's being exploited is that if I tell you a story of something that happened long ago to somebody and it was horrific, I'll tell you the story now. What data does your emotional body get? What do your emotions hear and feel? They experience it as if it's now. As if it's now. And what is happening with our girls and our boys and our women is that they are being exploited and weaponized with too much charge that is unfounded, because chronology is broken in this world of gender accusation. So by chronology, I mean that, so in any law, in any court of law, it would not be fair for me to make James here do the time for something, a crime a guy committed in a different nation hundreds of years ago, right? No court in the land would say that that's fair, but it is deemed completely fair and appropriate across the gender battle, that there is zero chronology when people are demanding penance from the men around them now. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't the guy that did those things. You've gone and done a course or watched some videos where you had 200 horror stories from 2,000 years across 50 nations, and you heard them in 2 hours, and of course you are absolutely overwhelmed with compass-like feelings telling you this must change, I must change this, I've got the charge to change this, I want to change this. It's like, it's not happening. It's not happening. Honest, it's not. That was then, all right, yes, it was horrific, yes, changes can be made. But the fact that you're keeping this feeling alive now, you're being exploited, mate.
They've been made.
Yeah, you've been exploited and made and turned into a useful tool of the state to divide the family and divide the relationship between men and women. And I know many relationships that have ended because of unfair expectation and entitlement in women. Unfair expectation and entitlement because of this belief of some penance due from the collared ones, from the cuffed ones, from the ones that are killing themselves at a rate of 84 a week in this country. Sorry. You know? It's like, really, the oppressors? Honestly? You buy that? The only ones that really buy it are the ones that are totally indoctrinated, abstracted in little boxes. And they've been weaponized and turned out into our social spaces. Keyboards, Facebook, newspapers, and they've been given control of the outlets now to keep feeding a narrative that is designed to exploit your emotional nature and to make you upset and to make men feel ashamed and blamed and to cow themselves and to bite their tongues and to allow women to walk around and treat men however they like, which is what's happening now with no comeuppance. It's really not a way to build bridges between people, even if there were wrongs of the past. That's not the way to move forward. It's just a repeat of what you claim to be removing, is what we're seeing. Now, this is, like I say, it's an exploitation here. It's an exploitation of something wonderful in women, which is their ability to feel, and to feel accurately. This is another thing in total equity about the differences between men and women. This is the last sort of like layer I'll add on for your minds in this session, and then we'll look a bit more at the geo situation. But another big thing that indicates the difference between men and women in the Toltec tradition is literally balls. Okay? And it is about all mammal fetuses were female first. We all have all the bits. But something happened at day 47 or 49 when testosterone came in, and the balls that would have been my ovaries get pushed out. Okay? So for women, the balls are on the inside, and for men, the balls are on the outside. And these are incredible powerhouses. So nature likes to build in balls. So this is it in a flat image, but if you can make that a 3D image, you've got a planet, you know? And so nature likes to build things in balls all over the place. Cells, atoms, eggs, almost a ball, planets, all that sort of stuff. For some reason, us walking abouters, we need 2. Okay? And then to make a third, we need 4. Okay? It might be possible with 3, I don't know. I'm not sure if anybody's had conception with either one ovary or one testes. It probably has happened. But, so I am talking about the testes and the ovaries here. And I want to draw attention to a quote by an actress, I can't remember her name, Betty somebody. And she would say, "Why do people say grow some balls? Those things are weak and sensitive. If you want to be tough, you should grow a vagina. Those things take a pounding." Okay? It's a very, very famous quote. I would have thought some of you would have heard it by now. But the thing about the balls is that it is because of their sensitivity that it becomes so useful for men, you see, because men all this amazing sensorial information and data comes from the balls, which you'll feel. Have you ever watched the edge of a cliff or climbed too high on a tree?
Yeah.
Your balls let you know. Your ovaries will let you know when you're near the edge. They will, though. They will. It's not made up. It's like natural selection. Whoa, don't take another step there. It's all over. You know? So balls do give, that's at the edge of life that they give that level of data. But they give data all the time. And in fact, the Toltecs would say they are how we perceive. And so men, their excellence at speed, direction, tool crafting and working out what's going on outside, and why they're so visual, why they're so objective, is because all of the sensitivity of the balls are on the outside of the body cavity. Women, their balls and all that sensitivity is on the inside of the body cavity. So they receive all the data coming through the body, which is why they will tend to speak either solipsistically or subjectively about feeling. And men will tend to be more visual and more objective. That's why their sexuality is the same. You know, you'll find women are more turned on and aroused by how they're feeling and what's going on inside, and men are more aroused and turned on by what's going on outside. And this is where the various skills come in. But it's important to know this, because when we realise this, men and women actually have to work very, very hard to really hear each other. To really hear what is being said, you've got to work fucking hard. And I really mean it. I don't say it lightly. To really hear what's being said, not on the face of it, to see what they really mean, because it's coming from a totally different perspective from what you're used to. The inside and the outside is huge. And in a way, you could almost say that, you know, there's 2 ways that we could look at how things go in the world. You could say that for men and women to complement each other. So let's look at the politics for an example, where the political left is more feminine and more feeling and less objective. So when you start to pick apart some of the policies there to look at the finances or whatever, which would be the political right, that's what they would pay attention to. Well, can we afford it? Can we do this? I'm not sure we could do this, or whatever, you know. The feeling side is like, I don't care. We just got to do that. I just feel like this is so important. This injustice can't go on anymore. I don't care how we do it. I don't care what the cost is, you know. Whereas on the other side, the political right is like, you know, just can't afford that. Who's going to pay for it? Whose money? Is it your money? It sounds like it's my money. I don't want to pay for that. Why should I? It's like a fair question, you know. So in a way, but what these 2 perspectives are competing in our politics rather than complementing each other. And if we looked at it on the male-female side, you could almost say where the female would be like, oh, this feels like this to me. How does that look on the outside? And the man could be like, oh, this looks like this to me. How does that feel on the inside? You know, it's almost like you could say, the man could say, oh, I feel everything in the world around me. Whereas the female might go, oh, I feel everything in the world within me. And it's this prime quality of the difference of the balls, and you can't identify with that. Okay, that's not something that can be identified with. You can't identify with having ovaries or testes. You either experience that or you don't. So in a way, it's like I see some mums that are surprised by how sensitive their boys are. They expected their boys to be hardier, and they were surprised at how emotional they are. And it's like, That's because of how sensitive their balls are. They're getting so much data. It's overwhelming them, and rather than supporting them to be skilled at it, we demand that they're experts in all sensuality and sexuality by puberty, and then we wonder why they're killing themselves and they're addicted and copping out of society and life altogether. Are you joking me? You're actually, you can't see why? You know? It's just incredible. And this lack of understanding of the difference, the real difference between the male and the female, means that what most people are talking about is wasted breath. It's a wasted conversation talking about salaries and jobs and garments and stuff like that. Total wasted conversation. You know, it should be about us each cultivating dexterity and skill with our own charge for change, rather than making it a blob. You know, say, well, I will take responsibility for this because I can see that this needs to be done. You know, in a way, so what the Toltecs say is they say that actually all human children are female first. And they're female because they have no points to make. So they would say that the men would traditionally patrol the boundary, so the masculine, just like it does in the cell and whatnot, you know, the masculine's on the boundary, it keeps safe that which is precious. And when you get rid of the masculine, you cannot expect that which is precious to stay precious for long. Okay? It just can't. So anyway, so the masculine is patrolling the boundary, the masculine also brings in new resource, and the female organises it all. Like that's what happens with us, is we'll go out, our consciousness, the I will go out, we'll learn something new, and then it'll be like, right, okay, my state of my life needs to incorporate this now. Oh, I realised I should eat less chocolate. Oh, my own state is resisting that. I am resisting the instruction to eat less chocolate. Oh no, I'm going to have to work on this internal conflict. That's an internal gender conflict where my own state is resisting my own change. If I find that in myself, then I should expect that out in the world. That when I'm seeking to change the state, you have to expect that there will be resistance. It's just part of it. So that's what the masculine does. There's a few other functions of it. But the point is, children don't do any of those things because they can't. And in fact, from a gender point of view, the masculine in women is called the mother. Because the mother is male relative to her children because she does all the line drawing. She makes all the points. She patrols the boundary. She brings in the resource. Okay, so all children are female first until the point of initiation. And this is our problem with our boys and our girls at the minute, is that initiation, rite of passage into adulthood isn't happening because we've forgotten how. And this here is a rite of passage. You can all choose now when to self-initiate yourselves to change the world from this. Because for all of us, we were feminine to the world. It was like, okay, world, I have heard your points. I have received your penetrations. I have seen your lines. In my compass I have digested. Here are my fucking points. Here are my lines. This is my change. This is where I take charge and say no more of that here. You can do that out there, I don't care, but not here. That's initiation. When you say, I, the one, have processed this and I see this needs to change, the charge bubbled up in me in the form of sadness, outrage, anger, frustration, helplessness, but instead of sitting there fucking drinking it or spending it rattling away on a keyboard, I'm going to use it to embody my form and go about and bring some bloody change. Whether that is in the form of my labour or in the form of my ideas or in the form of my connection and my time and my services, it doesn't matter, because that's what my charge is for. But each of you need to find your own charge. It's not the same as mine. And this is how you follow it, this is how you find it, because the breadcrumb trail to repair your own ruler lies within you, to heal the gender wound lies within you, and it lies in your body, not in your mind. And it's in the body when you are stirred, when charge bubbles up in you, when the desire for the world to be different bubbles up in you. That's yours. That's charge. That's telling you, I need to do something here. And most people will suppress it or ignore it or whatever, or medicate it. What I'm suggesting to you is, start now, start small, start getting good with it. Because if you don't start getting good with your frustration, your anger, your outrage, your helplessness and all of them, and being able to stand with them, fully present in you, and still get your points across, then all people are going to see of you is an empty husk that talks about what bothered you, rather than something that animated them and inspired them and fired them and got them going with your life and your interest and your actual presence that's clear that you're interested in this thing, because you all have it in you. Every one of you has it in you. It's just as long as we're disembodied, it's like stashed away in here, and the mind's away over here, and these two have to be brought together to become the powerhouse that is your potential. And it's healing a gender wound. It's about the relationship between the feeling and the point maker and the line drawer. You feel something, okay, great. What do I do with that? First of all, is this, I have to use my compass. Is this a real feeling, or am I just sulking? You know, is this a real feeling, or have I just been poked in my something or other, my inadequacy, my worthlessness, or something like that? You know, is it real? Okay, once it's real, great. Is this an instruction that I need to change something? And if so, then boom. That's what the I statement is for. I will no longer do this. I am going to do this. I am not going to accept shoddy food anymore. I am not going to put up with this from this person anymore. And so for most people, because they are really wounded in drawing lines and making points, they've got a wounded masculine, you need to start small. Because otherwise you will be standing there and your lips will be wobbling and shaking, your knees will be trembling, and you won't be able to get any of your words out. So start small with things that you would normally ignore. Things that you know bother you, but that you would normally ignore. Like somebody skipping the queue. Or a meal that isn't up to scratch. How many of you wouldn't send it back? Wouldn't make the point? Yeah, start there. As long as you've got the feeling, the key is, if the feeling is genuine, then honour it. Because it's yours. Honour it, even if there's cost. Because what ends up happening is, I know so many people that say, I really felt this when they said that, but I know that they've got this going on, so I decided not to say anything. And what you've just done there is you've made somebody else's feelings and reality more important than yours. And you give your emotions that message enough times, and they just shut up and take the medicine.
And you haven't helped the other person either.
You haven't helped them at all. Yeah, and you haven't achieved deeper connection, deeper growth, deeper self-knowledge of each other, and in fact you've actually created like a bit of disconnection there, because there's a fundamental difference there. It's really important that you start to honour. So I'll give you some tips, because problems are easy to paint, solutions less so. So here's something that you can do to start to look after yourself, going out there with your charge, with your ruler, with your one. The one that says, I am not going to put up with this anymore. The energy of non-acceptance, an expression of discernment, which is a form of discrimination. But discrimination is being demonized as being only negative. Discrimination is a highly positive thing in the form of discernment. And if you can't discern, then you need to go back to Nigel's lessons and learn how to think first. Because that is how you process what's going on between the data out there and the data in here. What's my compass saying? What's my eyes saying? Right, I need to balance these two. Not like suppress and compress one and adulate the other, or whatever other deformed pickle we choose to conceal how we really feel about things. Again, it's a cultural thing, because it's that stiff, it's almost like the stiff British upper lip, isn't it, of not expressing how you feel. Well, we've got to overcome that if you want to be embodied. You've got to overcome that if you want to get through the pickle that's ahead, because it's only embodied characters that are going to make it, I'll tell you that. Because otherwise, again, people are just going to hear you talking about stuff, and they'll walk past you like you're a ghost. Whereas if you speak from how you feel, get into it fearlessly. And yes, the first few times you do it, your lips might wobble and your knee might shake, and you might not do a good job, but you will get better. So here's some examples. So for most people, when their emotions spasm, so something will happen, emotions will spasm, and we'll say or do something that we don't feel good about, and then the mind might go, you're so stupid, why did you do that? You look like an idiot, or something like that, possibly. That's the relationship that needs to get sorted out. You need to start using your mind to support how you feel. This is the beginning of you healing the gender wound inside. So something along the lines of, normally I wouldn't say anything about this, and I've never told anybody this before, but I'm going to try. It might come out wrong, but I'm going to have a go. Let your spasm come out, however it is. That didn't quite go how I went, but I hope that's okay, or that went better than I thought, or whatever. So instead of using the mind as a negative judge and critic, you use it to create the space for your own inexpertness. True self-care. Yes.
I think it can be I've experienced people who've been to sort of therapists who've said, don't ever hold anything back, just express everything you're feeling all the time. And I think it's very important to be able to, well, what's guiding you?
Yeah.
What's guiding your motivation to speak at that moment?
Yes. And that's that thing, you must know yourself. You must have that sense, you know, am I seeking attention or power here? Am I seeking to manipulate here? You know, and this is that thing about understanding one's own spasms and one's own dark side, absolutely. And this is why it's about that, this is that measurement of values, which is, oh, I was going to move there, but actually the values that were attached to that movement were pretty shoddy. You know, oh, if that was a bit toxic, that was a bit manipulative, that was a little bit of my own dark side there. You know, and this is that process of getting to know oneself. You're right, thank you for adding that. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap up soon because it's almost dinner, but let me just see what my other bits were here. I mean, obviously, this is a huge subject, and obviously I've just scratched the surface here. Now, I'll do a brief summary of what we covered here today, but just so you know, these are huge subjects that you can spend ages on, like years. What I've shared with you today is actually over 25 years of work that didn't come all at once. It was progressive. Before I recognised that was the one or the I was just, when I first met Eleanor and Nigel 10 years ago, it was just points and lines then, didn't know anything about the rest of it. And it's because it's been a progressive journey into the mind, the human mind as it was given to us. And so when I say that this is a way out of the mind back into indigenous mind, I mean it. People who work with this method and work with this way arrive more at what I call the felt mind, which is it's a shared experience. You know, when you share mental space with somebody, there's a feeling that goes along with it, and that's a quality that most of us only touch in certain circumstances. Using this and beginning to think and work on you know, this sort of work will bring a much more present and palpable felt mind experience as you go through your daily life. And I have testimonials to prove it if anybody's interested. So going forward, I am doing, so I do male rites of passage now, but I don't tell anybody what we're doing in them, because one of the things that's missing is mystery. And really and truly, the rites of men begin at the edge of the known. The rites that turn boys into men are staring at the void and the unknown and the darkness and not knowing what's beyond there. That's what turns boys into men. And so to replace that, because we don't have that anymore, the event itself is obfuscated. People have to come along and find out. So I have one of them next week in Lawful in Scotland. If anybody's interested, there's a couple of spaces left on it. And otherwise I have a couples event being run with a lovely Celtic healer woman that's in June and July. It's a 6-day bridge building retreat between the sexes, where I will be going into all of this stuff in a lot more detail, because we have actually covered a lot of ground here today, even though maybe it doesn't seem like it, maybe it does. But each of these can be gone into in loads of detail. So just summarise what we covered. So we covered the basic shapes, which is getting back to a native mind, or a felt mind, an indigenous mind, a fractal mind, which is what these shapes, the point, the line, the circle and the spiral, start thinking and looking for where they behave in nature and how they behave will really increase your mental agility and capacity. And so most people, when they are trying to improve themselves, they will go and do a course or read a book or something. That's like getting a little operating system upgrade in Windows or in Macintosh. You know, it's an operating system upgrade. This is a machine code upgrade. Okay, this is at the machine code level of mind. It's this. You can ponder this stuff for years, and it will continue to reveal new and genuine revelations for you. So please don't abandon these seeds. Give them time to grow. So we have the native mind of the basic shapes and how they are expressions of the ancient relationship between the masculine and the feminine expressed in nature, where the masculine and the feminine are in balance in every element, producing the spiral, except in our species, where the men are collared, you don't learn about the line, and we are in a massive gender pickle, to the point of becoming infertile. You know, the point is our mainstream state of culture has become infertile. The fertility rate has already dropped below continuity. We have people adopting more and more infertile positions. We're eating infertile food in the form of F1 strains. It's got infertility and collapse written all over it, you know. So this is a fertile direction for your mind to go in if you want to pursue it. So play around with the line in the circle and the eye. Really work with your eye. Repairing the internal ruler takes years, especially if you have worth issues. And if you think about it, to see the top mammal on the planet with incredible capacity and range, to see each of you as examples of that, where some of you may carry doubts about your ability or doubts about your potential, to me is a great crime. You know, it's a great woe that any of us carried out or uncertainties about our value and that we have a place. And as far as I'm concerned, if life has given you a breath, you're in the game. You know you're out of the game when life stops giving you new breath. Job done. Until then, you're in. You're worth something. It's game on. What are you doing? What changes are you bringing? Are you just in state, or are you bringing change? You know, and really for all of us, our compass tells us all the time to be making changes, because that's what our feelings are doing. They're telling us, oh, you need to change this, you need to change that. My compass told me to make changes 10 years ago and I've still not made them. What is it for you? You know, this is about, do you listen to yourself? And this is also about, this is all internal ruler work, about valuing what you have measured. You experienced this. Do you value your measurement of that? If so, how about applying it? Easier said than done, isn't it? You know, but that's that reality. As you do it, what you will be regaining is a capacity in the masculine, which is, I'm going to do this, despite all of the resistance that I feel towards it. And we gradually expand our territory, or we secure our state. And really, we're talking about your state of well-being, your state of worth, your state of peace, your state of love. And if you don't have a state of peace and worth and all the rest of it, you can't experience love. If you think you're worthless, you can't experience love. You know? Okay, so we also looked at the main difference between men and women. First of all, well, the main difference between masculine and the feminine as electromagnetism in the human form. Your electrical is your masculine. Whenever you are charged for change, that is your masculine, and you need to be making some points or drawing some lines to get rid of that charge. Otherwise, I'll show you what happens when I finish. Something not so good happens. And your magnetic is your accepting, it's your feminine, it's your welcoming side. So most of us will have a wound in one or the other. Have a look. Do you have a problem receiving and accepting from people? Do you struggle with that? Do you resist that? Then it's a feminine problem you've got. If you have a problem making points and drawing lines, it's a masculine one. The reality is it's probably a mix of the two. Such is the gender pickle that most of us find ourselves in. So we also looked at that big difference between the male and the female, the men and women, as being balls on the inside, balls on the outside. And that is vital for understanding the difference between how men and women refer to their experiences. You know, so what you'll find is with men, it'll be very linear, and with women it won't be as linear. And that's because the Toltecs sum it up as rational and irrational, but they don't mean irrational in a negative way. What they mean is there doesn't need to be a linear link between points of meaning. That's it, but it's true. It doesn't mean they don't have meaning, though. That was what you said Ayn Rand did. Ayn Rand did exactly that, which was she took two seemingly unrelated points and showed there was a relationship there. That's our feminine. That's why that works in all of us. So we looked at balls on the inside, balls on the outside, and then I showed just a little bit at how politics and geopolitics are actually an expression of the gender wounds that are in our culture. So the point is, if you repair the gender wounds that's in yourself, in your relationship, then that in itself will mean that you will hopefully be free from the infection of the blob that is collapsing around us, that is affectionately referred to as the matrix here. So I'm going to finish by showing you what happens when you do not express charge as it's moving through you. So, not in that spasmic way that you were talking about, of course. So, what we have is, I just shared with you the first line of the sovereign. This is the first line of the sovereign. What happens is, when charge builds up enough and you've made enough I statements, for that you can actually take charge. So taking charge means that you can handle the charge moving through you for your desire for the world to change and how you feel about it. If you can't, then it'll spasm out of you beforehand, either in anger, outrage, or medication or suppression. So most people can't take charge yet. With practice, you can then take charge, and once you can, you're then able to move beyond just securing your own state, which is what you're doing with your I statements. That's securing and defining my state, saying what I will and won't accept here. Then when I'm at a stage where my I can take charge enough of myself and my state, take care of it, then I'm ready to cross the line. So this is drawing the line. You have to be able to take charge enough before you cross the line, otherwise you're a liability to yourself and your cause. Okay, so crossing the line looks like this. Okay, what do we call this? What are the words for this in our language? Cross, what else? Positive. Addition. Okay. Okay, that would be longer, I think. But yes, you're right, cross.
Well, it would have a body on it.
Yeah, there is that, there would be a body on it. So, and it wouldn't be having a good time. Yeah. So, crossing the line is when we're really able to take charge, and it's really what it means to be positive. Anyone who tells you being positive is to do with a happy mood is a closet depressive. Okay, promise you. No human can sustain a happy mood all the time unless they can secure their state. Unless they've secured their state. Being positive is about carrying on with my purpose despite how I feel. Staying in charge of my vision and what I believe needs to change despite my low mood, despite my low energy, despite my sadness. That's what it is to be positive. It's not a happy mood. Now what ends up happening is that if we can't take charge of what's moving through us, then what happens is we get cross. And it's stuck charge. So ladies, you may have noticed that if a man had advanced on you, you weren't immediately available to him, it might have looked like he was a little bit cross. Or men, you might have noticed that if you went for a discharge, either by yourself or with a woman, and it wasn't possible, then you might have noticed a bit of irritation in you. It's not an emotional irritation, it's a bioelectric charge that you have to manage in your body because it's trying to move. And it's stuck there and you've got to hold it. This is true for all of us, that when the charge in you isn't moving and it starts to get stuck, then you will end up expressing it negatively. You must express it positively, otherwise it will be negative. There are no other options. So here's what that looks like. So for example, I'm angry with my partner for something, but instead of tackling it positively and saying, hey, this happened, I'm really angry about it, instead I do the drip feed thing. You know, I drip feed anger over a period of time. So what's ended up happening is she still doesn't know why I'm angry with her. She knows I'm angry because I'm starving her of attention or contact or niceness or whatever. She knows I'm angry, she doesn't know what it's for. That's my charge getting spent negatively. And eventually I might come out of that huff a few days later because the charge is cleared. And it's like, hey, how are you again? Oh, you're a bit cheerier this morning. Because the charge is moved. This is the point. It's important to make the distinction here about gender and emotion because there's a slight difference here. People think folk are being emotionally kind of like haughty or moody over these issues when it's not. It's electromagnetism moving and how difficult it is to hold on to it. And what happens there, and so this will happen all the time, no matter what happens in your interactions. If a charge bubbles up that is genuine and it's yours and you don't positively express it, then the other person will get it negatively by your disconnection, by your lack of attention, by your switching off in one way or another. You know, it is what happens. It's much better to take charge of it positively and have a go, because mastery will come if you have a go. But if you never have a go, you'll die frustrated and upset. You know. So anyway, take charge, be positive. If you forget anything else, just remember that. Take charge, be positive, and your basic shapes. So we covered loads of ground here today. I recognise that. I really appreciate your very precious attention and sticking with me through it all, even though we covered quite a bit of ground there. If anybody is interested, I have, a website. I have, I do one-to-ones and coursework as well. I have a few products here which aren't gender products, they're other products that you're welcome to come and check out because I do some other work as well. And otherwise, yes, Nigel?
Can I just ask you a little question?
Yes.
Darren? I remember you talking previously about the circle and the line,
yes,
and some combination of one over the other for the power switch or something?
Oh yes, that's right, of course, thank you, yeah, let's do that, that's very useful. So the point is, these shapes, these basic shapes turn up everywhere in our culture. As I said about the circle and the line bounding nature, and the circle and line also turn up on all our power buttons, on all our electrical appliances. So you'll see a line and a circle on all of them, either like this, or like this. Okay? And this is about electromagnetism. It's about gender. And this is basically saying on and off basically. But what do we call what are the terms for this symbol? What do we call it?
Power.
We call it power. And it's about the penetration of the masculine and the feminine. It's the power. It's a power button. Only when they're together. Now here's the thing. If we complete that, remember I talked about this spiral? Yeah. If I was to bisect that spiral anywhere in nature, what would be the name of the ratio?
The golden ratio.
It's a golden ratio. Phi, yeah? The symbol for phi is this. Yes, the symbol for phi is the perfect penetration of the masculine and the feminine, which is what you find if you bisect the spiral in nature. You'll find the perfect balance of masculine and feminine, except in our species where everything is a mess. And you'll find that elsewhere, where these shapes turn up, the relationships, none of them are accidental. These are fractal truths that I'm sharing with you. So wherever you go out, no matter where you go in the world, no matter what language people are speaking, the rules of electromagnetism and gender and the balls in gender are the same, and they're true, and they stand. So yeah, it's only the Toltecs that cover those angles, but sadly I think I'm the only guy that is now teaching them. So you'll have to come to me.
Is it a Scottish tribe?
No, the Toltecs they're actually, the famous ones are American, but they're actually global. So the famous American ones are Carlos Castaneda and Don Miguel Ruiz. So the Four Agreements, anyone? Yeah, Four Agreements, that's Don Miguel Ruiz, that's Toltec thinking. So in there he talks about the parasite, which is the part of mind that I'm talking about.
Can you spell it, Toltec?
Toltec. But the gender work isn't in any of the American Toltec tradition, and actually came from the African branch. So the Americans, the Toltecs, apparently were keepers of wisdom and knowledge, and about that 10 to 13,000 year old incident that happened, they decided that the proverbial was hitting the fan for our species, and they had to split the knowledge up. And so they broke it into different fragments and split it all over the world. And so the perception and awareness work was maintained by the Americans, and the gender work by the Africans. And there's some other strains as well, but they're not recognised as Toltequity, but I suspect that they are.
What's the African one called?
The African author is Tayun Mares, Theun Mares. He's dead now, but he got me started 25 years ago. So his books cover some of this stuff, and they cover some of it in more depth than I've done, and he goes a bit further into cosmic gender. But the stuff on balls and electromagnetism, this is my contribution to the Toltec field, really. So you have to get that from me for now until the book's finished. So on that note, it's going to be dinner time. I think Lynn's going to be bringing food over. You can come and see me for questions afterwards, I think, because I think others might want to eat. But otherwise, genuinely, thank you for your time and attention. Oh yeah, website, alternativeanswers.net.